For this video, we'll be discussing jQuery HTML, or how to manipulate the elements of HTML using jQuery. And this is first of 6 parts. The part 1 will be about how to get values from these elements or HTML elements. So jQuery, the get content and attributes. So jQuery contains powerful methods for changing and manipulating HTML elements and attributes. So that's what we'll be discussing for this video. jQuery DOM manipulation. One very important part of jQuery is the possibility to manipulate the DOM. jQuery comes with a bunch of DOM related methods that make it easy to access and manipulate elements and attributes. So DOM stands for Document Object Model. The DOM defines a standard for accessing HTML and XML documents. The W3C Document Object Model is a platform and language-neutral interface that allows programs and scripts to dynamically access and update the content, structure, and style of a document. So to get content, here are the methods that we'll be using. We have the text method, HTML, the val, and the attr or attribute method. So these are 3 simple, so maybe 4, but we'll just first discuss the 3 simple but useful jQuery methods for DOM manipulation. So these are text, so sets or returns the text content of selected elements. HTML sets or returns the content of a selected element, including HTML markup. So that's the difference between the text and HTML. So for text, just a plain text, but for HTML, it will include the HTML markup or the tags. Val set or returns the value for form fields. So these are, let's say for example, the input tags. The following example demonstrates how to get content with the jQuery text and HTML methods. So let's take a look at this code. So first, let's take a look at the HTML code here. So we have here a paragraph with an ID test, and it contains this text. So this is some bold text in a paragraph, and the bold text is enclosed in the B tag. Okay, then we have here 2 buttons here. One is with an ID of btn1 and the other one is with an ID of btn2. So if we click on this button and click on this button, what will be the functions, or what will be the action that will be done? So let's first take a look at the button 1. So if you click on this, so function, then it will show an alert box. So this is an alert box in JavaScript. Then it shows text plus test.text. So it will get whatever is the text element, the text inside this element with an ID of test. For button 2, similar with the first button, so except that instead of that text, we use that HTML. So this will give, of course, the text value or the text of this element. So this is the element P, or the text inside the element rather. And this one, it will also give the text inside the element, but including the markup. So here's an example of the output. So once we click on the button, the first button, it says here, so this is the default by Google Chrome, but this is the output that we specified in the alert box. So text, this is some bold text in a paragraph. So that's the first one, that's the dot text. Then on the second one, if you press the second button, the output will be something like this. So HTML, this is some, so we have the bold text here, but it includes now the HTML markups. So that's the difference between that text and that HTML. Another example, example 2. So we have here a paragraph, and inside the paragraph we have an input box, also with an ID equal to test and a value equal to Mickey Mouse. Then we have the button, so we click on the button, show value. So once we click on the button, this will be our uh, the action. So method click, that's the event. So once we click on the button, it will show value, then test.val. So val here will return whatever is the value of the input box. So here. So the output, if you click, will be something like value Mickey Mouse. Now, if you change this value, let's say for example, you type another value, that value will be updating this attribute here. So if you change that to Donald Duck, for example, and you click show value, then it will show here Donald Duck, not Mickey Mouse. Then we have the get attributes, the ATTR. The jQuery attribute method is used to get attribute values. So just to recall, attributes are, here are examples of attributes. For example, for this A, so anything we place here, including the ID, are actually attributes. On the previous slide, for example, value is also an attribute. Type is also an attribute. So these are attributes. So these things we place inside a tag are what we call attributes. So here, in this code, we have here a paragraph containing a link or an anchor with the following attributes. So href is equal to https www then www.w3schools.com, id equals w3s. Then we have here some text is /a. Then we have the button show href value. So once we click on the button, so we have here the button click event function. So alert, then $, our selector. What is this? This is the ID of this. Then that attr href. So that means we are going to show the href attribute of this element with this ID. So this is that element, and this is the value of that href. So https, etc. That's why if you click on this button, this will be the output. We have here https www.w3schools.com. Now let's try to have a live demo. So where's my notepad? Here's my notepad. So let's take a look at this. So I have here a paragraph with ID test. This is some bold text in paragraph. So we have show text, show HTML, so just like in our slides a while ago. So let's create the event for that. So $, btn1, click, function, open, close, close. So that's for the first button. So that is what I will be placing here, the code or the action to do if I click on button 1. Then I'll do the same thing with the second button. Button 2 that click function. So here again, the format for function, open, close, parenthesis, and then open curly brace, close curly brace. So that ends the function. So the same is true with this function, open and close parenthesis, then open curly brace, close curly brace. So that's the format of the function. So again, what are we going to do? First, for button 1, we're going to show the text property. So to do that, we have alert. So let's say text. Then we join and get the text property of this element here. So the ID of this element is test. So how do you refer to that? That should be test. That's the ID. That text. So that's how we get the text property or the text inside that element. And then this is the close parenthesis of the alert box, semicolon. So similarly, the same is true with the get button 2. So I'll just copy and paste. but instead of the text, instead of getting the text, we're going to get the HTML. No, that's the same test, but instead of dot text, this should be dot HTML. Okay, so we're able to follow that one. So I have here two buttons. I have here my paragraph with an ID test. So what I want, if I click on this button, the show text button, it will show the text inside this element. So I have a button 1 click event. So once I click button 1, it will show an alert box with the following text. So text, that's string plus I join this one. So test that text. So I'm going to get the text property inside this element with a test ID. So that's the element with the test ID. And the same is true with the button 2. But the difference is I'm going to use that HTML for button 2. So let's try to run. So here's our program. If I'm going to show text, so there, text, this is some bold text in a paragraph. I'm going to show HTML. So almost the same, but you notice that the tags or the HTML tags are included in that HTML. Now how about the val? Let's have a next button. Button equals btn3, class equals button primary, show value slash button. So I'm going to have here another event. So button 3, that's the ID of the button. So what will happen if I click? So it will do this function. Okay, so inside the function will be the action. So alert value equals, for example, plus. So how do I get the value of that text box? So what's the ID of that text box? The ID is name. So what I'm going to place here is number name, then that val, then close semicolon. Okay, so that will get the value of the element with the ID name. So the val is used for form controls like input. So save and refresh this one. So I have here now the third button. So if I click on this, it says here value equals Mickey Mouse. Then okay, what if I change the value? Let's say I place here Donald, no, not the president, Donald Duck. So I click on this, it will now show Donald Duck. So whatever is the value here will be retrieved, will be accessed by that function, the val function. Then we have the alert. So let's have another button, or the attribute rather. So button ID equals button 4, class equals button primary, show attribute slash button. So the same, let's have a click event for that button. So we have button 4. So the number sign denotes that it's an ID. That click function, open close curly brace, and then closing the method, the click method, or actually that's the event. So how do I show that? Alert. What will I show? The href property first. Oh, actually there's only one attribute, So href equals. So plus, what's the ID? Oh, there's no ID. Hopefully. So let's try. But of course, it's more logical if it's an ID because we're trying to get a value of a particular element. But let's try this one. If not, we'll be placing an ID. So href. So let's try to refresh. Show attribute. So there, I have now the attribute. But of course, it's more logical if you use the ID because using the tag for something to get a value, there is a possibility that we have a lot of tags with of the same tags, the same HTML tags. Okay, so let's try to look again at the code. So button 4, we have here attr to get the attribute. And we can also change that. Let's have another example. So instead of a, I'm going to use $, name. And the attribute that I would like to see is, for example, type attribute. Okay, let's try that. So name, that's name. That's the ID. So I'm referring to this element. And what I would like to see is the type attribute. So if we refresh this one, show this, so type is text, or it should be type. So type equals text. So you can actually use attr to show a lot of attributes. So even the ID, maybe the class, or even the value. Okay, so that ends my demo, and this is the first part of manipulating HTML using jQuery. So thank you very much.